I stood in my own driveway and couldn't remember where I was. My name was still on the mailbox, but the car in the garage wasn't mine. And the man who answered the front door wasn't me. I'm David. I'm 39, a systems engineer. 2 months ago, I was working on a government contract in Anchorage, freezing nights, endless code, counting the days until I could sleep next to my wife again. Her name is Rachel. We've been married almost 9 years. The last call we had was warm. Not perfect, but warm. She said, "Come home safe. I miss you." No signs. No warnings. Just those 5 words I clung to when the work got too heavy and the nights got too long. When the contract ended early and I got a surprise flight home, I didn't tell her. I thought it would be romantic. A stupid idea, maybe, but I imagined the look on her face when she saw me walk through the door. Instead, I got his face. He was barefoot, wearing one of my old flannel shirts like it was his. And when he opened the door, he didn't look surprised. Just, mildly confused, like I was a delivery guy who got the address wrong. "This is 1805 Ridgewood, right?" I asked, like maybe I was the one out of place. "Yeah," he said slowly, eyeing my suitcase. "You lost or something?" I was too stunned to answer. Behind him, I saw my couch. My bookshelf. My damn wedding photo still on the wall, half turned to catch less light. But no Rachel. Not yet. I didn't shout. I didn't punch him. I just stared past his shoulder like a ghost at his own funeral. "Who are you?" I finally asked. He shrugged. "Rick. Rachel's boyfriend." That word, boyfriend, slammed through my chest like a steel beam. Not friend, not roommate. Boyfriend. I could have sworn I heard a faint crack behind my ribs. He started to say something else, but I stepped back. I was afraid of what would come out of me if I didn't. Rage, maybe. Or begging. And I didn't want either. I drove to a motel. One of those places with plastic keys and the smell of old carpet. I sat on the bed and stared at my hands for hours. They didn't feel like mine. Nothing did. When I finally checked my email, I found it. A digital trail of betrayal, clean, cold, paperless. Rachel had filed a change of ownership on our house. She'd rerouted access to our bank. Even the car title was updated. And the worst part? She'd filed a legal name change form on my behalf. To what? I don't even know. I didn't open the attachment. I couldn't. But it was signed. With my forged signature. The house wasn't just stolen. I was. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I just kept replaying every call, every message, trying to find the glitch in the timeline. There wasn't one. Just a woman who waited until I was 3,000 miles away to erase me like I was a typo. The next morning, I drove back. Not to knock. Not to fight. Just to see if she'd look me in the eyes. When she stepped outside to get the mail, she saw me. And she flinched. That's how I knew she thought I'd just disappear quietly. She was wrong. She stood there on the porch in my old hoodie, and hugged the mailbox like it was a shield. I could see her lips twitch like she couldn't decide whether to speak or just pretend I wasn't real. Rachel had always been good with words. But that day, she had none. I stepped out of the car slowly, like approaching a wild animal. One wrong move and I knew she'd bolt. Maybe that's what I wanted, to see her run, to know she still felt something. She didn't run. She crossed her arms instead, the mail clenched in her fist. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should he," I said, nodding toward the front door. She didn't flinch at his name. Rick. The guy who wore my shirts and probably slept on my side of the bed. The man who somehow got invited into a life I built while I was out earning the money to sustain it. Rachel looked thinner. Not sick, not unwell, just smaller. Like the weight of everything had pressed her down a little. But her voice was still sharp. You were gone, she said. And I got tired of being alone. 2 months, I said. It was a 2-month contract. She looked away. It wasn't just the job, David. You've been gone longer than that. That line. I've heard it before, movies, therapy ads, divorce forums. You were already gone. It's the kind of phrase people use to soften betrayal. But it didn't soften anything. It just made the edges sharper. I don't care if you hate me, she continued. But I had to make choices. I needed security. I couldn't wait for you to figure out who you are. I laughed. I didn't mean to, but it came out dry and bitter. So you forged my name. Rewrote my life in ink while I was signing contracts in the cold. It wasn't like that. I took a step closer. Then what was it like, Rachel? Did you practice the signature? Did you smile when the notary stamped it? Did you celebrate when the bank approved the transfer? She didn't answer. Silence has weight. It sat between us like a third person, louder than yelling. I thought I'd feel rage. I thought I'd scream. But what I felt was thinner, sharper. Like a paper cut in the soul. She hadn't just betrayed me, she deleted me. And now there was a paper version of me somewhere in a courthouse file. A version who never came back. Who never existed again. I turned to leave, and that's when she said it, soft, almost pitiful. You always acted like nothing could touch you. I stopped. Turned. That's because I thought you wouldn't. She didn't cry. Neither did I. But her hand trembled when she opened the door. And I knew, this wasn't just about a house or a man. This was a war I didn't even know had started. I didn't go back to the motel that night. I drove. No direction, no plan, just back roads and small towns lit by gas stations and 24-hour diners. I needed motion. Stillness felt like surrender. The ache wasn't loud. It was quiet. Cold. A dull pressure behind my ribs that never let up. Like my chest was trying to remember how to hold a heart that had just been evicted. By sunrise, I found myself parked outside the house where I grew up. My parents had passed years ago, but the place hadn't sold. I never had the heart. The porch was rotting. Weeds claimed the driveway. But the lock still worked. Inside, dust curled in the sunlight like ghosts. I sat on the floor where the couch used to be and let it hit me. I had no home. Not really. Not anymore. The strangest things hurt most. The coffee mug with my initials I left behind. The fact that someone else probably drank from it now. The photo album she hadn't even bothered to throw away, just stored in the attic, as if erasing my legal name was enough to make my face disappear too. I tried to make sense of it. Rachel and I weren't perfect, no marriage is. But we weren't broken either. At least, I didn't think we were. She used to make me playlists for my trips. Send me stupid memes during meetings. Whisper goodnight over FaceTime. And somehow, in the space of 60 days, she'd rewritten the entire story without me. It made me question everything. Not just her. Me. The kind of man who could be replaced so quietly, so efficiently, without anyone blinking. A man who missed all the signs. Who thought being faithful and providing was enough to be irreplaceable. I spent that whole day going through my old stuff. Boxes of childhood trophies. My dad's old flannel jacket. Yellowed yearbooks and a rusted lunchbox I couldn't throw away. All of it felt more mine than the life I'd left 2 months ago. By nightfall, I started making lists. One list was practical, lawyers, banks, proof of identity. The other was private, memories she couldn't steal. The way her hand used to curl around mine while she slept. The nervous smile she gave before our wedding. The chipped blue plate she always used when she was sad. I didn't cry. I just wrote. A storm rolled in just after midnight. Thunder groaned over the roof like an old man waking up too fast. I stayed on the floor, listening to the rain batter the windows. Something inside me finally broke, but it wasn't a scream or a sob. It was a silence so deep it scraped the bone. This was grief. Not the sharp kind that howls in your ears, but the slow erosion of self. The understanding that the version of life you trusted is gone, and no one's coming to fix it. That night, I slept in my childhood bedroom. No sheets. Just a folded jacket as a pillow. I didn't dream. I didn't need to. The nightmare was wide awake. Mornings used to mean something. Coffee brewing. Rachel humming while scrolling through her phone. The sound of the shower running while I ironed my shirt. Routine. Familiarity. Small, invisible threads that held life together. Now, mornings just arrived like strangers. Uninvited. Unwanted. I'd wake to silence so complete it buzzed in my ears. My body moved out of habit, but the rhythm was gone. Everything felt like a reenactment, going through motions for an audience that no longer existed. I cleaned the house for no reason. Wiped dust from windows no one looked through. Sorted through drawers filled with relics, tax returns, expired coupons, faded birthday cards. In the bathroom cabinet, I found a pregnancy test, unused, in the box we bought together during a more hopeful time. I held it for a long time before tossing it into the trash. There was no point in keeping symbols of futures that never arrived. People started calling. A few friends, mostly hers. They didn't say much, just awkward check-ins, the kind that come when word gets around but no one knows what to say. I let most go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to perform politeness. At the bank, the woman behind the desk looked at me like I was a ghost. She asked for ID, but her eyes said she already knew. My accounts were closed. My name wasn't on the property anymore. Everything had been transferred, perfectly legal, perfectly cold. All of it felt rehearsed. Like I'd walked into a play I hadn't auditioned for, and everyone else knew their lines. I hired a lawyer. He was good, expensive, and quietly impressed by the precision of what Rachel had done. He called it premeditated but clever. Told me I had a case, but it would be slow, ugly, and public. I said yes. Not for revenge. Just to remind myself I still existed. I started going for long walks in the evenings. Through neighborhoods where no one knew my name. I watched families through their windows, kids dancing in pajamas, couples cooking dinner side by side. It wasn't jealousy. It was grief for the life I thought I had. Strangers seemed more real than the person I had loved. Sometimes I passed a florist on Main Street. In the window was a sign, "You can't bury pain with petals, but it helps." I never went inside. Just read it, again and again, like a quiet prayer. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was the displacement. The erasure. She didn't just move on. She replaced me while I was still breathing. Every document, every locked door, every login that no longer recognized my name, it all whispered the same thing. You were never really here. But I was. And I still am. Even if I have to rebuild from the ashes of someone else's version of my life. It was 2 weeks before I saw her again. I had avoided the neighborhood like it was cursed ground. I didn't want to drive past what used to be ours. The porch where we drank wine in summer. The tree we carved our initials into. Even memories started to feel like lies. But the lawyer needed one last document, the original marriage certificate, and the only copy was in the fireproof lockbox in the hallway closet of the house I no longer owned. I went early, just after sunrise, hoping no one would be home. The driveway was empty. The curtains were closed. It felt like approaching a grave, not a house. My key didn't work anymore, of course, but the back gate still creaked open, just like it used to when I let the dog out at night. I stood at the threshold for a moment. Not from hesitation, just trying to remember which version of myself used to live there. Then I rang the bell. Rachel answered the door barefoot, wearing a robe I'd given her on our 3rd anniversary. There was no makeup. No mask. Just the face I had memorized 100 times, now slightly paler, more worn. She didn't speak. She just stared. I told her what I needed, brief, flat, like a business transaction. She nodded and stepped aside. The house smelled different. New cologne, new detergent, new silence. But beneath it, faintly, was still me. The lemon oil polish I always used on the wood shelves. The faint scent of coffee beans from the grinder I left behind. Small betrayals of continuity. I walked down the hall like a thief. Opened the closet. The lockbox was still there, buried under coats. I retrieved the certificate, checked the seal, and stood up, ready to leave. But then I saw it. On the hallway table sat a stack of mail. And on top, my name. Not the legal version, not the fake signature. My name. A letter addressed to me, forwarded from my old employer. Opened. She was still reading my mail. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The truth wasn't in the confrontation, it was in the quiet things, the details, the things that linger when the person is gone. Rachel followed me to the door, but she didn't ask how I was or what came next. Instead, she said something that didn't land the way she thought it would. I thought you'd hate me by now. But hate takes energy. And I was already exhausted from surviving her absence. I left without a word. Back at the old house, my parents, I burned the letter. Not out of anger, but to stop looking back. That night, I packed up every box in the guest room. Not Rachel's things, mine. The things that reminded me who I was before the erasure. Before I became just a signature to forge. Books. Tools. My dad's old radio. Faded photos of people who never stopped choosing me, even in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just moved, steady and quiet, like building a shelter in a storm. And somewhere in that motion, I realized something: grief has its own calendar. It doesn't care about justice or court cases or apologies. It doesn't wait for closure. It just wants acknowledgement. And for the first time, I gave it that. Not with words. But with the decision to leave her ghost behind, and carry my own name forward, even if I had to start from nothing. The lawsuit moved slowly. Papers filed. Motion submitted. The legal system didn't care about betrayal, it cared about evidence, dates, signatures, notarized lies. The lawyer called it a textbook identity manipulation, but even that sounded clinical. Sterile. It didn't match the mess inside me. I kept waking at 4:17 a.m. every day, like my body was caught in some invisible loop. That was around the time I used to call Rachel from Alaska, just before I fell asleep, just after she got off work. We had a rhythm. Or maybe I just thought we did. Now, when the clock hit that time, I just stared at the ceiling, letting the stillness stretch until the walls started to hum. Friends offered advice. Move on. She's not worth it. You're better off. But advice is easy when you're not the one sorting through the rubble. People want a clean story. A good guy, a villain, a comeback. But some stories are just ash. There's nothing to build from. Not yet. I declined every invitation. Dinners. Drinks. Catch-up coffee. Not out of pride, but preservation. Every interaction felt like a reminder of what I couldn't explain. I wasn't interested in telling the story yet. It still felt too raw, too unstable. I needed it to settle inside me first. Rachel tried to call once. A number I still recognized. I watched the screen ring until it stopped. No voicemail. No second attempt. I think that was her way of handing me the silence she'd chosen for herself. For once, I didn't resist it. Some days, I'd drive to the county courthouse just to sit on the steps. Not because I had an appointment. Just to remind myself I was doing something about it. Fighting back, even if it didn't feel like fighting. The wind there always felt harsher, like the truth stripped bare. It wasn't about revenge anymore. That had faded. What lingered was something simpler, an ache to exist fully again. To rebuild identity from something that hadn't been altered, signed over, or erased. One morning, I threw away the last item she'd ever given me, a leather-bound planner with my initials stamped on it. I'd kept it, tucked in a drawer, not for function but for sentiment. But it reeked of control now. Of appointments and anniversaries she no longer honored. Letting it go wasn't dramatic. No fire. No tears. Just a quiet drop into the trash and a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for months. Later that day, I stood in the mirror and looked at myself, not for flaws, not to measure damage. Just to acknowledge the man still standing. I had lost almost everything. But not my reflection. Not my mind. Not my name, not really. And somewhere in that stillness, a single thought rose like a slow tide. I don't owe anyone the version of me they tried to erase. It didn't end with a gavel. Not really. The court eventually ruled in my favor on most things: fraudulent transfer, forged documents, restitution. She was ordered to return a portion of the money, and my name was officially restored to the records it belonged on. But legal victories feel hollow when you've already bled everything they're giving back. No one applauded. No one cheered. There was just a stamp, a stack of papers, and a nod from the judge that felt like the end of a transaction, not a war. Rachel didn't show up in person. Her lawyer handled everything. That was fitting, somehow. After all the damage she'd done in silence, her absence was almost poetic. Like even now, she couldn't face the version of me that survived. The house? I didn't want it back. Too many ghosts in the walls. Too much weight in the floors. I sold my half to a private buyer and never looked back. Let Rick mow that lawn. Let him sit on that porch and pretend history doesn't whisper. I used part of the settlement to fix up my parents' house. Not to make it beautiful, just livable. One room at a time. Fresh paint. New plumbing. I even hung up my dad's old fishing rods in the garage like I used to see him do when I was a kid. It became less a retreat and more a resurrection. A space that didn't judge me for starting over. I got a new job in a smaller firm. Less pay. More freedom. Fewer conference calls at midnight. My new boss only knew the version of me who showed up, quiet, focused, slightly cautious. He didn't ask questions. I didn't offer answers. That felt right. I started cooking again. Just for me. Pasta that stuck to the pot. Burnt toast on tired mornings. But every meal was mine. No one rolling their eyes. No one tracking calories. No performance. Just food and silence and small victories. Once, while organizing old boxes, I found a photo strip of me and Rachel, taken in a booth at the state fair, years ago. Our faces smushed together, laughing, out of focus. I stared at it for a long time, then folded it gently and slid it into a drawer. I didn't need to burn it. I just didn't need it out in the open anymore. I don't tell this story often. Not because it hurts, though sometimes it still does, but because most people don't know what to do with quiet survival. They want rage. Or revenge. Or redemption with a soundtrack. But sometimes, the truest victory is quieter than all of that. Sometimes, it's repainting a kitchen no one else will ever cook in but you. Sometimes, it's saying your own name in the mirror and finally believing it again. Sometimes, it's just knowing that no matter who tried to erase you, you didn't disappear. You're still here. And no one gets to write your ending but you.